You woke up this morning, tapped a screen, and a car showed up at your door in 4 minutes. You didn't think about it. You didn't have to. But 100,000 years ago, that same 4-minute trip would have taken you 2 full days of walking barefoot through territory that could kill you before lunch. No road, no path, no map in your pocket, no wheel under your feet. Nothing but your own 2 legs and whatever direction looked less deadly. And here's the part that should stop you cold. For roughly 300,000 years, that was it. That was the entire transportation system of the human species. And somehow, in that time, humans walked to every single continent on Earth except Antarctica. They crossed oceans they couldn't see across. They reached islands that were invisible from the shore they left. And they did all of it without a single tool we would recognize as transportation today. So how did they actually do it? How do you cross a planet with nothing but your feet? And how do you keep going when the ground runs out? Let's start where every human journey has ever started. Your feet. Humans are the worst sprinters in the animal kingdom that anyone takes seriously. A cheetah hits 70 miles an hour. A horse sustains 34 miles at a time. You top out at maybe 15 miles an hour, and only for a few seconds before your lungs give up. On paper, you're prey. In practice, you're the most dangerous walker on Earth because speed was never the point. You can walk 20 miles in a day, sleep for a few hours, and do it again the next day, and the next, for weeks. No other large animal on the planet can do that. Your feet have arches that act like springs, storing energy with every step. Your Achilles tendon snaps back like a rubber band, so your muscles don't have to carry the full load. There's a ligament running up the back of your neck called the nuchal ligament that keeps your head perfectly stable while your whole body is bouncing underneath it. And you have around 2 million sweat glands. Every other large mammal on the savanna overheats and has to stop. You don't. That's called persistence hunting, and it's how humans ate for hundreds of thousands of years before we invented anything with a point on it. In 1978, a paleoanthropologist named Mary Leakey was working in a place called Laetoli in Tanzania. She found a trail of footprints pressed into volcanic ash 3.6 million years ago. 2 individuals walking upright, side by side. The oldest evidence of bipedal walking ever discovered. And here's the eerie part. The prints look almost exactly like yours. Same arch, same heel strike, same stride. Starting around 70,000 years ago, humans began walking out of Africa, not in one grand march. This happened in waves, generation by generation, small bands pushing a little further into territory no human had ever seen. They crossed the Middle East, they spread across Asia, they walked into Europe, they pushed north into Siberia, into cold so brutal it should have killed them, and they kept going. They crossed a land bridge into Alaska, they walked all the way down through the Americas until they hit the southern tip of South America. That's roughly 15,000 miles of walking, done without knowing the destination even existed. And they weren't wandering. Archaeologists have found obsidian tools hundreds of miles from the nearest volcanic source. They have found seashells buried far inland, amber traded across mountain ranges. These people were moving on purpose. They were trading. They were connecting with other groups. This was not aimless drifting. This was a network, on foot, across continents, with no map and no writing to remember it by. Just knowledge passed mouth to mouth, generation to generation, until it became a mental atlas of a world no one had ever drawn. But walking has one enormous problem. Walking works great until water gets in the way, and water was everywhere. Rivers cut through every migration route. For hundreds of thousands of years, a body of water was basically a wall. You either found a shallow crossing or you turned around. But somewhere, at some point, a human being looked at open water and did something no other land animal has ever done on purpose. They figured out how to cross it. In 2003, archaeologists working on the island of Flores in Indonesia found stone tools dating back around 800,000 years. Here's why that's insane. Flores has never been connected to the mainland. Even at the lowest sea levels of the ice ages, there was always at least 12 miles of open ocean between Flores and the nearest land, which means somebody 800,000 years ago crossed that water on purpose. Wood rots. Bamboo decomposes. Whatever they floated on is long gone, but the tools are there, which means the crossing happened. The first boats were almost certainly nothing. A fallen log, a bundle of reeds. Not designed. Discovered. Somebody grabbed a floating log to cross a stream and didn't drown. And the entire history of naval engineering started with that one moment. But what happened next was deliberate. Around 65,000 years ago, humans crossed from Southeast Asia to Australia. That crossing required at least 60 miles of open ocean. You cannot see Australia from the other side. Somebody built something that would float. They pointed it toward water they could not see across, and they paddled. Think about what that actually means. They left solid ground with no evidence there was anything on the other side, and they went anyway. The oldest boat we've ever physically found is the Pesse canoe from the Netherlands, about 10,000 years old. It's just a hollowed out pine log. But the technology has to go back tens of thousands of years further than that, because people were already living on islands they could never have walked to. And then the Polynesians did something that still doesn't feel real. Starting around 3,000 years ago, they crossed the Pacific Ocean, the largest body of water on Earth. They built double-hulled canoes, loaded them with food, water, animals, seeds, and entire families, and sailed thousands of miles across water with nothing in it. They read the stars. They memorized the direction of ocean swells. They watched the way certain birds flew at dawn and dusk. They noticed the color of clouds above land, which is different from the color of clouds above open ocean. And they reached Hawaii. They reached Easter Island. They reached New Zealand. Some of those voyages covered over 2,500 miles of open water with nothing in between. So walking conquered land. Boats conquered water. But there was still a problem no one had solved. You can walk 20 miles a day. You cannot walk 20 miles a day carrying a 200-pound animal you just killed. For most of human history, the real limit on transportation was not distance, it was weight. Your body can handle maybe 40 to 60 pounds before it starts to break you down. So humans started cheating. The first thing they tried was dragging. You kill something big, throw it on a hide, and pull it back to camp. Then somebody had a much better idea. The travois. Two long poles tied together in a V shape, with a platform slung between them. You drag the narrow end. The wide end holds the load. And just like that, one person could move 100 pounds, maybe more. The only reason we know about them at all is that indigenous peoples in the Americas were still using them when Europeans arrived thousands of years later. But the real breakthrough in moving weight wasn't something humans built. It was something they befriended. Around 15,000 years ago, humans domesticated the dog. It was the first animal we ever partnered with, and one of the very first jobs we gave it was hauling. In the Arctic, dogs pulled sleds across ice and snow. A single dog can move around 45 pounds. A team of 6 can move an entire family's camp across a frozen landscape. But dogs are small. We needed something bigger. About 5,500 years ago, on the steppes of what is now Kazakhstan, humans figured out the horse. We know this because of a culture called the bow tie. Archaeologists found wear marks on ancient horse teeth from bits. They found mare's milk residue baked into pottery. These weren't people who hunted horses. They rode them. They milked them. They built their entire lives around them. And the horse changed everything. For 300,000 years, the fastest a human being had ever traveled was about 4 miles an hour. Walking speed. On horseback, you could hit 30. In a single generation, the human world got roughly 8 times smaller. Messages moved faster than the people sending them. Trade routes stretched further than anyone had ever imagined. Warfare changed forever because an army on horseback could reach you before you even knew they had left. And it wasn't just horses. Donkeys hauled goods through deserts. Camels made the Sahara crossable for the first time in human history. Reindeer pulled sleds through the Arctic. Llamas carried cargo over the Andes at altitudes that would kill a horse. But here's the strange part. Humans crossed every ocean on Earth before anyone invented the wheel. Read that again. Boats go back at least 65,000 years. years. Horses were tamed 5,500 years ago. The oldest known wheel is only about 5,200 years old, discovered in the Ljubljana marshes of Slovenia. The wheel was one of the last major transportation inventions, not the first, and it didn't even start as transportation. The first wheels were pottery wheels, a spinning disc used to shape clay. At some point, somebody looked at that disc and turned it on its side and thought, what if I put something on top of it? The first wheeled vehicles were bad. Solid wood wheels, heavy, prone to cracking on rough ground, useless in mud. A horse without a cart was honestly faster than a horse pulling one. But around 2000 BC, somebody figured out the spoked wheel. Lighter, stronger, way faster. And suddenly, you had chariots, speed and cargo at the same time. Roads came next. The first paved roads we know of appear in Mesopotamia around 4000 BC. And once you had wheels, roads, and horses all working together, you finally had something that looked like a real transportation system. Trade exploded. Empires became possible. The wheel, the horse, and the road. That combination is what built every civilization you've ever heard of. So here is the full picture of how humans traveled before roads, wheels, or maps. For 300,000 years, they had nothing but their legs, and they walked across the entire planet. When they hit water, they figured out how to float. When they needed to carry more, they learned to drag. Then they built the travois. Then they partnered with dogs. Then they tamed the horse. And in a single generation, the world got 8 times smaller. Then they invented the wheel, and it got smaller again. And every one of those breakthroughs took thousands of years, and every single one was built on top of the one before it. Now, you sit in a metal box on a paved road doing 70, and you call it a commute. You fly 3,000 miles across an ocean in 6 hours, and you get annoyed the Wi-Fi is slow. You have a machine in your pocket that can summon a stranger's car to your exact location in 4 minutes, and you get irritated when it takes 5. Your ancestors walked barefoot for 15,000 miles across continents they could not name to reach places they had never seen. And they did it because they had to, because staying still meant dying. We solved the problem of distance so completely that we forgot it was ever a problem. Every highway, every airport, every set of train tracks on this planet exists because 300,000 years ago, somebody looked at the horizon and started walking. They didn't know where they were going. They went anyway. And that is the most human thing there is.